So, I finally watched Roofman, the 2025 film starring Channing Tatum and Kirsten Dunst, and I've gotta say, this one's been sitting with me for a while. It's directed by Derek Cianfrance, and it tells the true story of Jeffrey Manchester, a guy who robbed fast food restaurants and then literally hid out in a Toys R Us while dating one of the employees. Yes, that actually happened. Let me start with what works here, because there's a lot to like. Channing Tatum gives what I genuinely think is one of his best performances. He plays Jeffrey Manchester with this really interesting blend of charm and charisma, but there's something darker underneath. You can see this sense of entitlement, this desperation, and Tatum nails that balance. He makes you root for a guy you probably shouldn't be rooting for, which is tricky to pull off. And then there's Kirsten Dunst as Leigh Wainscott, the Toys R Us employee who becomes his love interest. Her performance is so subtle and naturalistic that it almost feels like you're watching a real person, not a character. Some critics are even talking about a potential Oscar nomination for her, and honestly, I can see why. The chemistry between these two really carries the film. The supporting cast is stacked with talent, even if they don't get a ton to do. You got Lakeith Stanfield as Steve, Jeffrey's old army buddy, who's basically the only person who knows what he's up to. Stanfield plays him as this grounded, cautious guy who's loyal but also increasingly frustrated with Jeffrey's choices. Then there's Peter Dinklage as Mitch, the overbearing Toys R Us manager who takes way too much pleasure in his tiny amount of power. He brings some dry humor that works really well. Ben Mendelsohn and Uzo Aduba play Ron and Eileen, these church leaders who welcome Jeffrey into their community. They represent this normal life he could have had, but the film doesn't give them much to work with. It feels like a bit of a waste of their talents, honestly. You've also got Juno Temple, Melanie Diaz, and Lily Collins in smaller roles that help flesh out the world, but none of them get storylines that really stand out. Visually, the film looks great. The cinematography uses these muted colors and soft lighting, especially in the romantic scenes with Leigh. There's this really effective contrast between the grim reality of Jeffrey's situation and the bright, whimsical world of the Toys R Us. That juxtaposition is one of the film's major strengths. Now, here's where things get a bit complicated. The film has this tricky tonal balance between being a crowd-pleasing romantic comedy and a melancholic character study. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I found myself really invested in the first half, but the pacing slows down considerably in the second half. The romance between Jeffrey and Leigh is compelling, but at times it feels like it overshadows the more interesting, darker aspects of the story. And that brings me to my biggest issue with Roofman. The film tells us what Jeffrey did, but it doesn't really explore why. There's this reluctance to dig deeper into the systemic issues that might have driven him to this point. He's a veteran, he's struggling, he feels like he can't measure up in traditional family life. But the film kind of skims over all of that. It opts for sympathy without really interrogating the broader societal pressures at play. The ending suggests that Jeffrey eventually realizes his family just wanted him, not the money or the things he could buy. It's a nice sentiment, but it feels a little too neat. I wish the film had been more curious about the why behind his actions rather than just presenting them as this quirky true story. Thematically, Roofman is about loneliness, reinvention, and the human desire for belonging. Those are interesting ideas, and the film does explore them to some extent. But it feels like there's a missed opportunity here to say something more substantial about masculinity, about what it means to feel like you're failing, and about the destructive paths people take when they can't see another way forward. So, where does that leave me? I think Roofman is a film that's elevated by two phenomenal performances from Tatum and Dunst. The chemistry between them is real, and watching them work together is genuinely compelling. The true story element adds a layer of fascination because you can't believe this actually happened. But the film's reluctance to fully engage with its darker themes, combined with some uneven pacing, keeps it from being something truly great. If you're a fan of character-driven dramas with strong performances, I'd say give this one a watch. Just go in knowing it's more interested in being empathetic and entertaining than it is in asking tough questions. For me, it's a memorable film with some real highs, but also some frustrating missed opportunities. I'd give it a solid recommendation, especially if you want to see Channing Tatum doing some of his best work. Just don't expect it to dig as deep as you might hope. That's my opinion on Roofman. Do you agree with my thoughts? What are your thoughts on the film? Let me know in the comments. Please drop a like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video.
Steal my crown, drop me till I black up, put your hands around her, down my heart, I'm guilty. She said, worship me, I control